I found out my sister was pregnant with my fiancé's baby. Only a week after I got engaged. But before I tell you how my entire life collapsed, I need to take you back to the night it all started. The night I thought my future was finally secure. My name is Lena, and for 3 years I was with the man I thought was my soulmate, Ethan. He was thoughtful, kind, the type of man who remembered how I liked my coffee and left notes on my desk when I was stressed. When he proposed, I felt like every struggle I had gone through was worth it. That same night, we drove to my parents' house to share the news. My mom, Caroline, was the type who lived for big family milestones. My dad, George, was harder to impress, but deep down, I knew he respected Ethan. And then there was my younger sister, Maya. Maya had always been the wild one. Charming, reckless, the kind of girl who got away with everything. Growing up, I was the responsible daughter, while Maya was the one my parents spoiled and protected. Still, I wanted to believe she'd be happy for me. When we walked in, I couldn't stop smiling. "We're engaged," I blurted, holding out my hand so the ring sparkled under the light. Mom gasped and hugged me. Dad shook Ethan's hand, clapping him on the back. And Maya, she squealed, threw her arms around me, and said, "I can't believe it. I'm so happy for you." But when she pulled away, I caught something in her eyes. Not joy, not excitement, something sharper. Almost like jealousy. I ignored it. I wanted this moment to be perfect. At dinner, Mom was already listing venues. Dad kept joking with Ethan about surviving marriage. Ethan held my hand under the table, giving me that little squeeze that always calmed me. But then Maya leaned toward him. She whispered something I couldn't hear, and Ethan laughed. "What did she say?" I asked. "Nothing. Just a joke," he said quickly. Everyone kept talking, but my smile felt stiff, and my chest felt tight. Something about the way they looked at each other, just for a second, didn't feel like family. On the drive home, Ethan hummed along to the radio, like everything was fine. I stared out the window, my reflection pale against the glass. "You're imagining things," I told myself. "She's your sister, she'd never cross that line." But deep down, a cold voice whispered, "This is only the beginning." I didn't realize it then, but in just 7 days, my sister would destroy my engagement and my family forever. After that dinner, I tried to shake off the feeling that something was wrong. But once you notice a pattern, you can't unsee it. The first time it happened, Ethan had come over to my parents' place while I was running late from work. When I walked in, Maya was sitting on the couch next to him, laughing way too loudly at something on his phone. She was leaning in so close her hair brushed his shoulder. "Oh, Lena, you're finally here," Maya said casually. Like it was no big deal. Ethan was just showing me these hilarious videos. I forced a smile, but my stomach tightened. Ethan looked at me, almost sheepish, and put his phone away. I told myself, relax. They're family now. Nothing's wrong. But the feeling kept growing. A few days later, my mom asked me to come over for dinner again. When Ethan and I arrived, Maya came downstairs in this silk robe, barely tied, her hair still damp from the shower. She looked straight at Ethan, smiled, and said, "Oh, didn't know you'd be here so soon." Ethan's face turned pink. Mine burned with anger. "Maybe put some clothes on," I snapped. Maya rolled her eyes and sauntered upstairs like I was overreacting. But the smug little smirk she gave me before she turned away, it said everything. The worst part, my parents never seemed to notice. Or maybe they didn't want to. One night, when I tried to bring it up with my mom, she sighed. "Lena, you're being dramatic again. You've always been too serious about things. Maya's just playful. Don't ruin your engagement by being jealous." Jealous. That word stung. I wasn't jealous. I was uncomfortable. But in my family, Maya was always the golden child. And I was always the one who was too much. Ethan, for his part, kept brushing it off. "She's your sister, Lena. You're reading into things." But the way he avoided eye contact when he said it made my chest ache. Then came the night that sealed my fears. Ethan and I were leaving my parents' house after another awkward dinner. As I walked ahead toward the car, I glanced back. Maya was standing in the doorway. Ethan turned to wave goodbye. For a split second that burned itself into my brain, Maya blew him a kiss. And Ethan, he didn't return it. But he also didn't look shocked. He just smiled awkwardly. shoved his hands in his pockets, and kept walking. My heart dropped. On the drive home, I couldn't stop replaying it. Did I really see that? Was I imagining it? Why didn't Ethan tell her to stop? I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, the silence between us heavier than ever. That was the night I realized I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was happening. Something dangerous. But nothing, not the whispers, not the kisses, not the unease in my gut, could have prepared me for what came next. 1 week after my engagement, my sister dropped a bomb that shattered everything. The night everything came crashing down is burned into my memory like a scar. It was a Friday evening. My mom had insisted on another family dinner to celebrate the engagement. I remember getting dressed, slipping on the pale blue dress Ethan always said he loved, and telling myself, tonight will be different. Tonight will feel normal again. When we arrived, the table was set beautifully. Candles, wine glasses, Mom's best china. She fussed over Ethan like always, while Dad poured drinks. And then Maya walked in. She was glowing. Not in the usual I'm showing off way. This was different. Her cheeks were flushed, her smile stretched a little too wide. She sat across from me, eyes darting between Ethan and me like she was holding in a secret she couldn't wait to spill. Dinner started. Small talk, laughter, clinking glasses. Ethan tried to act natural, but his hand was sweating against mine under the table. I could feel it. My pulse started pounding. And then it happened. Halfway through the meal, Maya set down her fork, cleared her throat, and said, "I have an announcement." Everyone froze. I looked at her, expecting another dramatic Maya stunt. But then she said the words that destroyed my life. "I'm pregnant." The room went silent. My mom gasped. My dad blinked in shock. My fork clattered against my plate. "Pregnant?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Maya's smile widened. "Yes. And it's Ethan." For a second, I couldn't process it. It felt like the world had tilted sideways. "What?" I choked out. Ethan's face went pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He just sat there, frozen. My mom dropped her glass, the wine spreading across the tablecloth like blood. Dad's jaw clenched. And Maya, she leaned back in her chair, smug and calm, like she had been waiting her whole life for this moment. "You heard me," she said softly. Her eyes locked on mine. "Ethan and I, we've been seeing each other. And now we're starting a family." My heart shattered. My fiancé, my sister, my blood. I stood up so fast my chair toppled backward. "Tell me you're lying," I begged Ethan. "Please, tell me this isn't true." But Ethan couldn't look me in the eye. His silence was the answer. Hot tears blurred my vision. My chest ached so badly I thought I might collapse. And then Maya delivered the final blow. She held up her hand, and there it was. A diamond ring, smaller than mine, but unmistakable. "We're engaged," she said. "We wanted you all to know together." My knees buckled. My parents sat in stunned silence, their faces a mix of shame and horror. Ethan finally spoke, his voice shaking. "I'm sorry, Lena. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. This way, as if there was ever a right way to destroy me." I ran out of the dining room, out of the house, out into the freezing night. My breath came in ragged gasps, my heart screaming inside my chest. Everything I had built, everything I had dreamed of, had been stolen by my own sister. But as I stood outside in the cold, shaking with rage and betrayal, a new thought burned through my tears. If they wanted to destroy me, they had no idea what I was capable of. The night of the betrayal, I didn't sleep. I drove aimlessly for hours, headlights cutting through empty streets, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. Every time I blinked, I saw Maya's smug smile, Ethan's silence, the ring on her finger. By dawn, I was sitting in my car, outside my tiny apartment, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. My body felt hollow, my chest physically hurt. I had been cheated on before, in college, but this was nuclear. This was my sister, the girl I grew up sharing a bedroom with, the girl I defended when she wrecked Dad's car at 16, the girl I thought would stand next to me at my wedding. And Ethan, the man I trusted with my whole heart. And now, they were building a life together. A family. For the next week, I spiraled. I didn't go to work. I ignored my friends' calls. My apartment became a battlefield of empty wine bottles, crumpled tissues, and untouched takeout containers. But the worst part was my parents. Mom called me 3 days after the dinner. Her voice was tight. "Lena, honey, I know this hurts, but Maya is pregnant. You can't change that. Maybe it's time to move on." Move on. Like my entire life hadn't just been ripped apart. Like it was nothing. Dad didn't even call. I knew why. He'd always protected Maya, no matter what. In their eyes, she wasn't the villain. I was just the bitter one who couldn't let go. That thought nearly broke me. Nearly. But then something shifted. On the 7th day, I dragged myself out of bed, stood in front of the mirror, and barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Red eyes, messy hair, shoulders slumped. And for the first time, instead of crying, I got angry. Really angry. I whispered out loud, "No. You don't get to ruin me. Not like this." That was the moment the grief hardened into something sharper. Something dangerous. I started small. I went back to work, pretending to be fine. I forced myself to eat, to shower, to smile when people asked. Meanwhile, I watched. I listened. Through mutual friends, I learned that Maya and Ethan were already parading their love story around town, telling people it was fate, that they couldn't fight their feelings. Maya was posting Instagram photos of her ring, her hand on her belly, captions like "everything happens for a reason." Each post was like a knife twisting deeper. But it also fueled me. Because while they were busy celebrating, I was planning. The idea came to me late one night as I scrolled through their smiling photos. I thought, if Maya wants to play games, fine. Let's play. But unlike her, I don't fight dirty for attention. I fight to win. I had one advantage Maya would never see coming. I knew both of them better than they knew themselves. Their weaknesses. Their secrets. The cracks I could split wide open. My tears dried. My hands stopped shaking. And for the first time since the betrayal, I smiled. They thought they had destroyed me. But what they really did was awaken the side of me that doesn't forgive. And if Maya thought stealing my fiancé was the end of the story, she was about to learn it was only the beginning of mine. When I finally decided to fight back, I knew one thing. Maya thrived on attention. She wanted to be admired, envied, seen as the one who won. So I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wasn't going to play the broken ex. No. I was going to let her dig her own grave. And I'd just hand her the shovel. The first step was Ethan. I knew his weaknesses better than anyone. He hated conflict, craved validation, and had a guilty conscience the size of a planet. Maya might have stolen him, but she had no idea how fragile he really was. So I sent him a simple message one night. Just one line. "Daud, one day, you're going to wake up and realize what you gave up." No anger, no begging, just that. And right on cue, he replied within minutes. "Lena, please. I didn't want to hurt you. I never meant for it to happen like this." Exactly what I expected. Ethan wanted to be forgiven, to feel like the good guy in his own betrayal. So I gave him nothing. No closure. Just silence. Because silence drives people like him insane. The second step was Maya. She was parading her engagement everywhere, throwing parties, posting pictures, bragging about the miracle of it all. I didn't confront her. I didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, I played the supportive sister on the surface. I left a polite congrats on one of her posts. Just one. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to make her think I was accepting it. Because if Maya thought I was backing down, she'd get sloppy. And she did. Within a week, I started hearing whispers. Friends telling me Maya had been bragging behind my back, calling me pathetic, saying Ethan never really loved me, that she was the better sister. Every insult she threw only made people question her character. And I didn't have to lift a finger. But I wasn't done. I had one more card to play. I knew something Maya didn't. Ethan had debt. Credit card debt he never told her about. When we were together, I'd helped him juggle payments, covering for him so no one found out. Maya thought she was marrying Prince Charming. She had no idea he was drowning financially. And when she found out, it wouldn't come from me. Oh no, it would come from the very people she was desperate to impress. I made a few quiet calls. A cousin here, a mutual friend there. Just enough to let it slip that Ethan wasn't the golden fiancé she was showing off online. It spread like wildfire. Suddenly, people were asking questions. Maya's little fairy tale was cracking at the seams, and I watched from the sidelines, smiling, as the world she built on my pain began to crumble. But the best part, that was only my warm-up. Because soon, I wasn't just going to ruin their reputations. I was going to take away the one thing they both loved more than anything: control. They say revenge is empty, that it leaves you hollow. I won't pretend it didn't change me. But I will say this: when someone rips your life out of your hands and hands it to your sister like it's a prize, you have two options. Curl up and let them keep your story, or take it back. I chose to take it back. The week before the wedding, I moved like someone who has been awake for days. Precise, slow, and dangerous. I kept my face the same I'd worn since the betrayal. Calm, measured, almost bored. If Maya wanted a show, she could have it. I would be the one writing the script. First, the practical stuff. People think revenge is fireworks and dramatic confrontations. It's not. It's patience, paperwork, timing. When Ethan and I were together, long before any of this, I'd insisted we keep one joint savings account for the house deposit. He'd signed the paperwork. When we split, he never bothered to separate it, either out of laziness or because he assumed I'd never do anything with it without him. He was wrong. I quietly moved the house deposit into a trust in my name. I transferred ownership papers for the car lease to my account. The ring on my finger? I had a duplicate made months ago. Identical, but fake. I stored the real one. If they ever thought they could walk away with what I had legally secured, they were in for a surprise. Second, I used the weapon people underestimate: silence and timing. I didn't shout accusations. I didn't beg. I let their own actions do the damage for me. While they plastered their happiness across social media, I made a few discreet calls. A friendly banker mentioned Ethan had missed several payments. A mutual friend, with no idea they were helping me, let slip that Maya had been asking about prenatal care and moving plans while still angling for a lavish shower. Gossip is a wildfire. It doesn't need arson, just wind. But the real move was the one they never saw coming. A week before the wedding, I did something that felt like stepping off a cliff. I filed to freeze the accounts tied to the wedding expenses. Not to be cruel for cruelty's sake, but because there was suspicion of financial misuse. I had documentation, receipts, screenshots, a breadcrumb trail Ethan had left because he was sloppy with online banking and social accounts. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough for the bank to put temporary holds while they reviewed unusual activity. No one could pay for the hall. No florist. No caterer. The vendors called, confused and panicked. Maya texted frantically. Ethan stared at his phone like it was a confession. They tried to blame me. Lena did this, Maya cried to anyone who'd listen. She's bitter. She wants attention. The angle was obvious. Make me the villain so their fans rally around them. But what people don't get is how satisfying it is to watch them scramble while the mirror reflects what they look like when a perfect image cracks. On the morning of the wedding, the house was a hive of manic energy. Maya was flawless, hair piled high, makeup perfect, a dress that screamed fairy tale. Ethan paced like a man trying to find the words to fix something that was already broken. My parents were frantic, making hostage negotiations with vendors, their voices thin with embarrassment. I showed up at the venue because I wanted them to see me, not to beg, not to scream. I wore a plain black dress, hair pulled back, no jewelry. I sat in the back row like someone attending a funeral. People kept glancing over, whispering, "Is she going to disrupt it? Will she storm the altar?" No, I had something quieter planned. As the ceremony started, the air smelled of lilies and cheap cologne. The officiant droned through the usual lines. Maya's smile was too wide, her lips trembling ever so slightly. When the moment came for the vows, Ethan's voice wobbled. He said things about surprise and fate, and my body felt like it was being hollowed out with each word. Then his phone buzzed. Ethan checked it. His smile dropped. He fumbled with the device, palms sweating. A hush moved through the crowd. He swiped, read, and then his face went pale. "What is this?" he mouthed to Maya. She read over his shoulder. Her face shifted from confidence to alarm, then fury. She yanked the phone from his hand and flung it on the seat beside the officiant like a grenade. That was my opening. A groomsman, someone I'd quietly asked 2 weeks before to be in on the finale, stood up and announced, loud enough for the microphones to pick it up. "I have something to read." People looked around. I felt the room tilt. He walked to the altar and unrolled the paper I had sent him. It had a single line typed in bold. "Enjoy your happily ever after, without a penny." Lena, there was a beat of silence that was so loud my ears rang. Then the phone in Ethan's hand pinged again. An email notification from the bank. Account review complete. Accounts frozen pending investigation due to suspicious withdrawals. The caterer cleared his throat, looking from Ethan to the embarrassed parents. Vendors started walking out. Maya's face turned gray. She looked at me like she had just seen a ghost. Her publicity, the image she'd sold online, the immaculate storybook tore at the seam and bled onto the carpet for everyone to see. People whispered. Someone said, "Is this a prank?" Someone else muttered, "This is a disaster." Then the groomsman opened his phone, and as if on cue, read a few messages I'd forwarded to him. Screenshots of Maya texting a close friend about using the wedding gifts to pay off some unexpected costs. An image of Ethan panicking over past due notices. A voice memo Maya had sent bragging about how easy it had been to get him. It was raw. It was humiliating. It was true. For a moment my parents didn't know whether to be angry at me or at them. Maya started crying, but it was not the shocked, innocent kind of cry. It was the shrieking sound of someone watching their carefully built stage collapse. Later people would say I'd ruined a wedding. They'd say I'd been cruel. Maybe they were right. But here's the thing. Maya didn't just take my fiancé. She took my home of future plans. The idea of family I'd pictured for years. She and Ethan had spent that week spinning a narrative of love and fate, without ever considering how much destruction they left in their wake. People who hurt you and are then surprised when the hurt comes back. That's not my problem. That's their karma. The aftermath was messy. Vendors eventually worked out payments with the bank and the parents, humiliating negotiating about canceled services, refunds, and angry contract clauses. The couple's reputation took a hit. Friends chose sides. People who'd once liked Maya's glossy posts whispered in private rooms, and the comments under every photo became battlegrounds. What I didn't anticipate was something else that happened in the weeks after. Clarity. Not a silly, I'm better off clarity, a steadier, harder thing. People started reaching out in a way they hadn't when I was the one in love. Old friends called, not to ask for gossip, but to check on me. I reconnected with colleagues I'd let slide during my spiral. I went back to work and let my focus be the thing that reminded me of who I was outside of a ring or a label. As for Maya and Ethan, their marriage, if you could even call it that, lasted a few months. The pregnancy, it was real, and that complicates things in ways that can hurt real people, so I won't celebrate that. But the support network they thought they had, it crumbled. Ethan's debt surfaced publicly enough that he had to work on financial recovery instead of the Instagram perfect life they'd promised. Maya learned, in the hardest way possible, that manipulation builds no solid foundation. My parents, that was a different battle. They were furious at me. And for a while, I was the villain at every family gathering. They said I'd overstepped. They asked why I didn't talk to them first. I told them once that when your child chooses to blow up someone else's life, you don't get to be surprised by the fallout. They did not forgive me immediately. They still struggle sometimes to see the lines clearly. But distance does things. It clarifies loyalties, and eventually people have to decide what kind of family they want to be. If you ask me now whether it was worth it, I'll tell you this. Revenge filled the immediate, hot bite of injustice. But what stayed longer was something quieter, the return of my agency. I stopped being the woman who hid her pain and let the world walk over her. I started being someone who set boundaries, who recognized when affection was a weapon, when attention was currency, and when love was a lie. There's a moral here, but it isn't pretty or clean. It's that justice isn't always delivered by courts or by people saying I'm sorry. Sometimes justice is an act of reclamation. It's taking back what someone stole, sure, but also taking back the version of you that believed you were powerless. In the end, I didn't get everything. I lost illusions, and a sister I thought I knew. I gained a kind of peace that comes from not being the victim in your own story anymore. People loved the drama, the note, the frozen accounts, the ruined wedding. But what mattered most to me was that I walked away on my own terms, that I rebuilt. Was I cruel? Maybe, but when you're pushed to your absolute edges, compassion can feel like a luxury you no longer can afford. I didn't enjoy the spectacle. I did, however, finally breathe again. Maya and Ethan moved away for a while. My parents and I took months of silence before we started having honest conversations, and those were messy and slow. I dated again, cautiously. I learned to be more careful about where I placed trust, and sometimes, late at night, I still look at the ring I kept in a box and feel a cold, small satisfaction. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I wanted to prove to myself that when life rips away what you treasure, you can take pieces back in whatever way you need to survive. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, I won't tell you what to do. I'll only say this: you get to choose how your story ends, and you deserve to be the author. Thank you for listening.